Far more than we think. Making Sense of Spirituality by Angelo. Chapter 29. The Mind Has a Mind of Its Own. I've mentioned several times now the distinction between the conscious and subconscious minds. A deeper understanding of this subject is helpful for when we later come to decide if we wish to adopt spiritual practices, and if so, which ones. It's worth repeating the rather surprising suggestion that the conscious mind occupies roughly just 10% of our brain power, with the subconscious mind making up the remaining 90%. What we experience as thinking is a fraction of what's really going on in the totality of our minds at any given moment. The words that you're reading here are currently only impacting 10% of your brain. Meanwhile, the other 90% is busy carrying on with business as usual. The knowledge and wisdom that you read about here and elsewhere is all very interesting, but without reinforcement it will quickly fade. The concepts that now seem so important and obvious will not gain a foothold in our lives because as yet our subconscious mind remains largely unaffected by what we are discovering. I believe this simple fact is the root cause of much frustration in spiritual matters. A conscious understanding of the principles will be insufficient to bring about lasting behavioural change. The key to fundamental experiential change lies in accessing the subconscious mind in some way. When we talk of the mind, we tend to think predominantly of the brain, although reference is often made to such things as intuition arising from gut feeling, or strong beliefs being located in the heart. Focusing on the brain for now, much is known about which parts of the brain perform which functions, and how the brain has evolved over time. The three main evolutionary developmental phases cover the brain stem, the limbic system, and the neocortex. In simple terms, the brain stem covers basic functions such as heart rate, breathing, digestion, sleeping, and movement, whilst the limbic system includes such things as emotion, behaviour, motivation, and memory. The neocortex is comprised of several lobes and has a broad spectrum, including language, logical thinking, spatial imagery, and creativity. In addition to this overall physiology, we have the left and right hemispheres, where specific activities occur. The distinction between the conscious and subconscious mind does not so much refer to these physical aspects of the brain, but is an abstract concept that separates the thinking that we are consciously aware of from the memory and background tasks. In computing terms, the subconscious mind would be analogous to the hard disk and that part of the CPU dedicated to system monitoring and performance tasks. The conscious mind would be the remaining part of the CPU that performs the logical processing. I've not been able to establish where the 1:9 ratio comes from in terms of the relative use of the brain, or indeed if this is a reliable or accurate estimate. A precise confirmation of the ratio is, however, not important for our purpose. The key point is that there is a significant proportion of our brain activity that is running on autopilot, and which determines a great deal of our beliefs and behaviours. Our ego resides not only in our conscious minds, but is deeply embedded in our subconscious, and lasting change can prove far more difficult than perhaps we would like. By way of definition, the subconscious mind that I referred to incorporates Freud's concept of the unconscious mind, and includes all of the bodily functions, reflex actions, and habitual behaviours that take place without any conscious thought. Sometimes it's difficult to draw the line between the two, and oftentimes the whole mind works seamlessly without any clear distinction. For example, when we drive a car, a great deal of our activity is subconscious, but we also have a conscious awareness of what's happening and where we're going. And this is true for many activities. But there are also many other times when we are clearly behaving automatically without any thought, as opposed to consciously choosing a course of action. This certainly explains why we sometimes act against our own wishes and behave in ways that baffle even ourselves. It also explains why willpower can often be insufficient to overcome an ingrained habit. The subconscious mind plays a huge part in how we live our lives. Many of us, including me until recently, have no idea just how impactful this is. We like to think that we are consciously choosing our path in life, but the subconscious mind often has other ideas. We will subconsciously overturn the very best of intentions if the new ideas do not conform to our deeply held beliefs. Whatever the exact percentage split may be, the subconscious mind has us significantly outgunned and can be very stubborn. And what's even more disturbing is that the vast majority of what is stored in the subconscious mind got in there without any conscious choice on our part. In our computer analogy, we have effectively been given a rogue operating system, and we battle hard to make it work for us. We do this without ever realizing that we have the choice to replace it with a new one. We get very attached to our particular version of the operating system because that is what we're used to and what we feel comfortable with. Even if our lives are not what we would consciously choose, we nevertheless remain unwilling to change the operating system because we fear letting go of what we know so well. The ego is rooted in the subconscious mind, and it will reject and ignore any new ideas that do not fit into its own model of how things should be. This, I believe, is why we have difficulty voluntarily embracing change. We will change and grow if we have to, but generally we prefer to stick with what we know. Before we talk about change, though, it's interesting to consider how the programming in our subconscious minds came about in the first place. If we didn't choose our own operating system, it must have come from somewhere else. One of the many things that I've been surprised to learn is that the subconscious mind effectively has no discernment. Just like a computer hard disk, an instruction to the subconscious mind to store a piece of information will be carried out regardless of whether it makes sense or is helpful. Every thought, feeling, experience, belief, and piece of knowledge will be filed away and available for recall by the conscious mind when required. As the conscious mind develops, we build up our own brand of discernment, based largely on what we've been taught, and any new data or experiences are then filtered by the conscious mind before they reach the subconscious. The trouble is that it takes years for the conscious mind to fully develop, and by then the vast majority of the core subconscious operating system is in place. It's estimated that most of our core beliefs and behaviours are effectively programmed into us by the age of 7 or so, and these will stay with us for a lifetime unless we find a way to change them. Even when we do eventually develop discernment and choice, the conscious mind will still refer to existing subconscious data in the very process of discernment, and beliefs and ego become self-reinforcing. Even if compelling evidence supports new truths, the subconscious mind may still influence the conscious mind to reject them if they don't accord with deeply held beliefs. And this is the basis of denial and internal dishonesty. We will deny the truth about ourselves in favour of a distorted self-image. I had always believed on some level that early childhood experiences were influential, but I'd not fully realised just how powerfully they shape our adult lives. As newborn babies, our subconscious minds already contain core systems for bodily functions, but our conscious minds are basically undeveloped, and our subconscious is largely unpopulated with data. From our very first breath, the senses kick in, and we start gathering and building a behavioural operating system. With no discernment, we have no filters in place, so everything we experience goes straight in without touching the sides. We pick up on the moods and behaviours of our parents or carers, and crucially, we believe everything we are told. And given that all parents and carers are themselves the products of their own upbringings, the signals we receive as children are at best mixed and at worst negative. The nature versus nurture debate comes sharply into focus here, and we see with clarity the almost frighteningly powerful impact of those developmental years. Even in a loving and nurturing environment, there's still the possibility for inconsistency and mixed messages. The people who loved us the most were probably the ones who inadvertently programmed into us many of the insecurities we experience in adult life. Core beliefs such as low self-esteem, worthlessness, low self-confidence, limited prospects, unlovability, and other negative traits all arise from having these messages drummed into us as children. None of us were born with these beliefs, and none of the traits were genetically inherited. It's not, however, necessary for any blame to be apportioned. Young and inexperienced parents inevitably pass on their core beliefs and behaviours to their children. When we add in the impact of siblings, close family members and friends, schooling, society in general, and the prevailing culture, there's plenty of potential to develop self-limiting beliefs. If we are exposed to addiction, abuse, domestic violence or other forms of dysfunctional behaviour in childhood, our core beliefs may well be far from healthy. In all cases, we're likely to develop a sense of individuality which we will perceive as setting us apart from others and which will form the basis of an ego mind. This core belief in separateness will underpin our very sense of existence and will create a void that we spend the rest of our lives trying to fill. We talk about fate sometimes as though our lives were all planned out in advance and we were bound to suffer. The stark reality is that many of us never had a chance to lead a happy and fulfilling life right from the start, but the cause of our suffering is not fate. The cause resides in our subconscious minds, and it's this that controls our destiny. Despite the best will in the world for a positive outcome, our subconscious mind will sabotage our best efforts if our core belief is that we don't deserve success. And we're not even aware that our subconscious mind holds such negative beliefs. The obvious point here is that a subconscious belief is not consciously known. We sabotage our own lives and don't even know why we're doing it. We want to be joyous and free, but somewhere deep inside our minds is a self-defeating set of instructions that was put there long before we were old enough to resist it. Fate has nothing to do with it, nor is there any external influence that is directing our lives. The higher power is within. Our subconscious minds are the masters of our own destiny. Each of us has a unique subconscious mind because each of us has experienced a unique life. The extent to which the subconscious mind controls our lives will vary depending upon our own particular upbringings and life experiences. Some people are able to achieve a great deal through sheer willpower and effort, whereas others seem to be permanently stuck in victim mode. There's no blame to be attached here, and there's no need for anyone to be judged as better or worse than anyone else. We tend to judge others by our own standards, and people who are able to achieve through willpower find it difficult to understand and accept why others simply can't do the same. The truth is that we are all victims to some extent, and it just happens to be the case that some people's subconscious minds are more powerfully negative than others. It could have happened to any of us, and the fact that it didn't is perhaps a cause for gratitude and compassion, rather than justification for an inflated sense of superiority. We can use our conscious minds to make the decision to change our core beliefs, but what we cannot do is rely solely on our conscious minds to make the change happen. What we can do instead is make the decision and then take action. It's the action that brings about the change. Intention without action will achieve very little. You could say that the mind has a mind of its own that causes much of our negative experience in life. The good news is that we can rewrite the operating system to bring about changes to our belief systems. And as we've seen time and time again, our belief systems have a dramatic impact on our lives. What we now see is that conscious thoughts and intentions may be completely overridden by subconscious beliefs. The ego and the subconscious mind can be seen as the enemy within. It's only when we take action to change our core beliefs that real progress can begin to be made. We really can choose to be happy beyond our imagination, but we have to do something about it first. If the mind does have a mind of its own, we may as well get it to work for us rather than against us. In order for this to happen, we have to take action to bring about change. We can read as many books as we like, but conscious understanding will not change subconscious behavior. If we want to improve our experience of life, we have to take action to change our subconscious beliefs. Deep understanding and good intentions will not be enough if we don't follow this up with daily action. It may seem churlish to say, but the simple truth is that nothing will change unless we change. The temptation is to believe that everything else and everyone else needs to change. The truth is much closer to home. It takes courage to change ourselves. This is the core message of the Serenity Prayer. We accept everything as it is and seek the necessary courage to change ourselves. It takes courage because none of us wants to countenance the idea of fundamental change. Our egos control our lives, and our egos do not want to be challenged. Thinking and wishing things were better will make little difference, because the subconscious mind will override the most earnest of desires. Relying on material possessions or other people to bring us happiness is also likely to fall hopelessly short. The only way to access the riches within is to take action to change ourselves. The good news is that the actions later suggested are not difficult, expensive or time-consuming. As we shall see in later chapters, spiritual practice is easily accomplished and can quickly be built into our daily lives. Practice makes perfect, as they say, and it's when we commence spiritual practice on a regular basis that the mind within the mind can begin to change.